Lack of clarity on a leader's part, numbers give clarity, absolute clarity, is why a lot of employees don't really succeed well or get frustrated because they're not really sure what done looks like. And they don't know what success looks like, right? Because they're either a leader's too busy running the business and doesn't give them praise or the care and feeding they need, or there's no way for them to actually see week in and week out, yes, I'm doing a good job.
So measurables is something that when I'm talking with a lot of both our clients and customers or just people on the street, I see people get a lot of anxiety about setting them. And sounds like you've heard some of the same challenges. What are the things you see hold leadership teams back from setting good measurables?
Yeah, great question, because a lot of companies that I work with don't have measurables because they haven't taken the time to actually figure out how do they keep score of their week to week, right? Or they have too many and they call them KPIs or metrics. It's all the same thing. But what it really is how do you measure your work on a weekly basis to actually tell you you're working towards what you need to do in this 90 days towards your 1-year plan, if you even have that. And honestly, even my old company, we didn't start that way. It was, if we got work done, that was a good week. But then it really comes down to like, okay, let's focus in and quantify what does good work equal. And the biggest issue with a lot of people is they don't too busy running their business to actually stop and talk about what's the nitty gritty things, getting into the weeds of this, or they're visionaries and they just don't want to. And if they have money in the bank, they're cool, right? There's no reason to, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it kind of thing. But when we get into working with them, we need to talk about how do you see from a leadership perspective and just get a glance every single week on what's working, what's not, what's trending, those kind of things that leaders need to know before they can go out and see how their people are doing. Because asking your people how they're doing and they say fine is not good enough. We need to know specifically, are they doing the work every single week to get us on the way towards achieving our plan? And if we don't quantify that, we don't know.
Yeah, that makes total sense. One of the interesting things I had come up recently was I saw people, they're like, yes, we've got these metrics, we've got these KPIs. And they had actually looked at every type of activity that could possibly come up and then tried to quantify like what's the ideal for all those activities. And it created, we'll say, a lot of complexity. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I hadn't actually seen that before.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Not measurables.
And again, consider the source. Some people are really detail oriented. They like getting into the weeds, right?
Yeah.
Some people are not, and that's okay. We try to strike a balance here. I use a sports metaphor here is if you're into baseball, and you look at the scoreboard, you can see if you're winning or losing, okay, that particular game. You look on the sports page and see the standings, you can see how well you're doing against the competition, but it doesn't, at different levels you need to go into. Now, you don't need to go into the whole book, the analytics guy have in the back, they go through pages and pages of data. Yeah, you have a person who does that. You want it at a high level to see how did we do yesterday? Mm-hmm. And what do we need to do today to get a little bit better? Or are we on track to hitting our numbers to get in where do we want to go? So again, it's got to be manageable and useful information. But just to give you a sense of what we do is when we work with a client, initially we have a lot of numbers because they just don't know what they need to know or not. Mm-hmm. And as they get better at it, they realize some of these numbers are the leadership team numbers. They actually tell you how they're doing as a company. And they realize some of these other numbers are really department level numbers. These really need to be owned by sales and marketing or operations or finance. And when they get that discipline, then everybody really has their own number. And the caveat here, these numbers have to be leading indicators of activity. So what we tell them is like, you're on a road trip. Where do you spend your time looking? Through the windshield. Where are we going? Right? And looking at our dashboard to see if we have enough gas and all these other things. Rarely do we look behind us, right? So again, 80% of our measurables or key indicators have to be leading indicators. 20% can be lagging. As an example, revenue is a lagging indicator. It's a result of your work. That's great. Right. But it doesn't tell you if things are working or not working. It just tells you, yes, you have money. So I say revenue's fine, cash flow's okay, but tell me more about the salesperson making the phone calls, setting up the meetings, putting out the invoices, closing the deals. If you need 10 deals a week, are they doing 2 per day? Mm-hmm. Right? And wouldn't you like to know if they're not doing that on a Wednesday, the first week of the month, rather than Friday, the last week of the month?
Right, right.
Those are the kind of things we're striving for. And we tell them we're not trying to make more work for you. We're actually just trying to bring that work to the surface so people can
Yes.
see what's going on. And we tell them also, speaks to accountability, directly to accountability. People that are accountable love seeing their numbers on a scorecard. They love seeing the A in the report card. People that aren't accountable don't like putting numbers up there. And that really helps us at a whole different level, really dig into the health of a company. Why is John coming in late to his meeting? Why is John not putting his numbers on his scorecard? How can we help John get his numbers to a certain point? And if we can't, as a leader, we can help coach him or maybe manage against that. So it gives managers a different way in a non-emotional way, to help their people excel.
That's very well said. I think that's spot on too. I was talking with somebody recently and they're looking for ways to improve how they set expectations for their team. And that was the part of the conversation we had, is like measurables are a great step one because they let you start thinking about your work a little more effectively. And then you mentioned, the sales numbers, I think, lend themselves very well to measurement. Where I hear a lot of people struggle is, okay, but I'm in more of an operational role. What should I measure? You can agree or disagree, but I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like, what are we doing, and how do you, as you said, bring what you're already doing to the surface? Can we start by counting any of that information? Have you seen anything work particularly well in operational roles or maybe internal support roles?
Yeah. And what we do in EOS, we start out by making sure they have the right structure for the organization, which means completing the accountability chart, which is like an org chart, but it speaks directly to what the seats do, not who owns them, right? What does that seat have to do for us to achieve our plan this quarter? How many widgets do they have to make every single day to help us hit our numbers? And then do we have the right people sitting in those seats? So even on the operational side, especially manufacturing, are they showing up on time? Yes or no, right? Are they doing their reports on time? Yes or no? Are they manufacturing what they're supposed to manufacture every single day? And if they're not, is it a maintenance issue with the machines? Is it lack of training? What else is going on? So again, the end game here is letting the leaders and managers get laser focused on what's really going on, not spending all this time investigating what they think's going on. They can actually see, well, Peter, like, everybody else is fine this week, but what's going on with you? It's like, well, I was sick for 3 days. Oh, okay, it makes sense. I get it. Or, hey, my machine's been down for 4 days and you were in meetings and I couldn't tell, those kind of things. And it allows you to have some great conversations about how you can evolve and adapt into a great leader, but also if there's something he can do or she can do on the front line based on their numbers, maybe that will help them become more autonomous and be able to say, hey, this is broken. I need help. I'll call the maintenance guy and so forth. My previous experience, when you get trained and you know what you're doing, you feel like you own your job, right? And when you can put up numbers, people get proud of that. It's like, this is what I did today, right?
Totally.
And a little competition is actually good amongst people. At the same time, you want quality work, right? So again, operations, showing up on time, doing great work, but almost how many errors did you have? How many reworks were there? All those things you really can, if you dig it down into it, almost every company, you can have at least one measurable per person, at least one that is meaningful. And showing up on time is not that meaningful, but if you have a frontline person and that's their main job, just please show up on time and open the doors. Maybe that's a good start. And you'll be able to find other things you can measure. And again, measuring people allows you to manage them effectively because it's objective. There's a number that they either hit or didn't hit, and that's the only questions or discussions you have.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And something else you said in terms of making sure that we're simplifying this in a way that we're getting a sense of what's really happening. It's like you don't want to go so granular and analyzing every little thing. Like I forget his first name, but Deming, the guy that used to go measure the production line.
Yeah.
Although that can be an okay start, it's what are the numbers? Can we get to a few that are meaningful and not get lost in them?
Yeah, there's got to be a balance. And we say, don't get overwhelmed. I mean, perfection is, it kills progress. So let's just start with one. What makes sense? What seems obvious? And then go from that. And if you catch yourself as a leader saying, I wish I knew this, there's probably a number involved in that. We can probably put that down and have them write it down. And again, I've heard people say, yeah, that's just more work for me. I'm like, is it? If you just took a second to write down what you did, wouldn't that give you a sense of accomplishment? Probably. And if they say, I need you to do 10 things today and you did 11, wouldn't that be great? And if you did 9, would you feel like you need to figure out why? Right? Again, we're trying to build autonomy with our people. If they're trained properly, we give them all the resources and they're the right person in the right seat, they really should hit their numbers if they're reasonable. And also, it allows the leader to say, hey, so-and-so's out this week, a whole bunch of things. We can get so-and-so to back them up for a little bit of time and know here's what our output should be, and we can work with that. And again, it gives them a sense to slow down and look at what they're going to expect or predict for their business rather than being reactionary, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's big for them. Like I said, the key culprit is most of the time they're reactionary. They're busy fighting fires, and they're too busy to slow down to actually start seeing if things are working on a Monday and they worry about what didn't work on a Friday.
Yeah, I find that interesting too. And I get it's counterintuitive, but it's so freeing once you come up with the numbers, because now you can figure out when it's okay to step away and maybe leave some things that are less important and take a break so that you can do more of the regular pause and reflect to see what we improve.
And we start with a simple exercise and we say, as the leadership team, imagine yourself on an island. What would you need to know from your company to either tell you, I need to get home to fix something, or I can stay another week? And I give them some time to think about that. And again, that's first pass. And some of it is revenue and so on and so forth. But wouldn't it be great if you knew sales were making all the calls they needed to, or closing those deals, and AR is all caught up or within the time frame you expected? And here's another thing we talk about is when you measure something, you get what you expect and you share that expectation with your people. Most times leaders don't. That's why they're disappointed. Lack of clarity on a leader's part, numbers give clarity, absolute clarity, is why a lot of employees don't really succeed well or get frustrated, because they're not really sure what done looks like. And they don't know what success looks like, right? Because they're either a leader's too busy running the business and doesn't give them praise or the care and feeding they need, or there's no way for them to actually see week in and week out, yes, I'm doing a good job.
100% agree with that. Things that I've seen people, I'll say, struggle with measurables also is, what if I choose the wrong one? What do you guys like to do? Or do you have kind of another one of those nice ways of looking at it? Can you iterate on your measurables? How often do you iterate and change them and improve them?
So there's really no wrong answer here. Pick whatever you think you think would make a difference or give you an understanding, again, of how the business is working day in and day out. Give it 90 days. And at the end of the quarter, say, hey, did this tell me the information I thought it would from the beginning of the quarter to the end? If it did, and it's relevant for the leadership team to help make decisions for the next quarter, then you keep it. If it's not, then you're like, yeah, that's really redundant. Let's take it out. That's okay. But we also make sure keep it in the archives so that you come back to it, you realize why you stopped checking it. And as teams evolve, then the other question to ask is like, is this really our numbers? This should be the sales department number or this group's number. The magic about a scorecard that we use, it can be translated all the way down to the entire company. So every level has their own level scorecard. And then the leaders just report what's working, what's not in their leadership meetings to the next level. So the leadership team's not bogged down with 50 numbers. And you can start with, we say 5 to 15 to start with. Sometimes it's 50. It's okay. But eventually they realize that 10 of these aren't ours or they're not relevant. And now we know, because we have data, we can put it aside. Because again, when people say, I think and I feel, my question is, where's the data? The data tells you, because it's objective, an absolute yes, this is it, this is not. And again, it gets the subjectivity out of running a business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you ever, or do you have any favorite measurables where you're just like, I've never heard that one before, that a company started tracking and was an unlock for them?
From previous experience, I worked in a call center back in the day, and there was one for bathroom breaks. How long the bathroom breaks took, right? Obviously, in a call center, time is money and calls are money. But think of this. There were people that would take long bathroom breaks, but they hit their numbers at the end of the day. And then the next question is, and this is where this really helps. The next question is, yeah, they hit their numbers, but how good were the calls with the clients? When we found out that they had long bathroom breaks, but they hit their numbers, we found out they weren't servicing the client very well, because they were just slamming through all the calls and not actually following the scripts and so forth. So again, that allows you to focus in on what's working, what's not. You talked about Kyle and Maggie. We talked about their frontline people because we had this discussion. Would this work down to their frontline people? I'm like, of course. You have people that show up. Are they on time? Do they open the register, close the register, all those things. Are they on track with their money? Things like that, that if it takes your manager's time to do something, would it be easier, or would that be replaced by having a number that's been reported? Would it save them 20 minutes by seeing a number? It's like, yeah, they did that. Their cash drawer checks out. I can move on to the next thing. Again, we're trying to simplify your business, save some time. But the simplest little things, were the bathrooms cleaned when they're supposed to on a regular basis? Things, easy things like that. Anything that could be checked off or signature. Again, if it's measured, it matters.
100%. And for anyone who thinks that, well, this only applies, this idea of everybody having a number, it only applies to brick and mortar businesses. I know some very successful startups that just say everybody uses, that's still in the dating world today, that got started and outperformed all their competition because everybody there got a number. Every single person. There's the one thing you can move, and you guard this number. And they created such clarity that at the time they were a scrappy little startup that outmaneuvered huge publicly traded companies and ended up owning the market.
And as companies, again, it gets more complex with more people, and it tends to go towards chaos all the time. And numbers give us, again, a sense of objectivity and clarity, like you mentioned. Did you hit the number or not, right? Did you win or are you losing? No, we don't like saying losing, but are we winning or not? That's how we like to put it. And do you want to know if you're not winning sooner than later? Because money in the bank at the end of the year and at zero is not a good idea. Wouldn't you like to know that in February? Those kind of questions. And honestly, a lot of the clients that we talk to, even their P&L, when's the last time you saw your P&L? Good question. I'm like, maybe that should be every week. Maybe that should be your report your finance person produces for you every week or whatever it is. Are they doing that? Yes or no? Because again, you get busy in the business, people forget to write stuff down and they forget what they actually did in the week. You can get busy in one thing and everything else gets collapsed down. So again, if you can, we're one step towards putting things on a calendar and becoming accountable and, getting those things done. And again, it also, I mentioned earlier, if they aren't getting done or they're slapping the numbers together at the end of the week or right before a meeting, that tells you that they're not very organized during the week. What else is going on there? And again, it gives leaders insights of how their people are doing in other ways.
Yeah, I like that, and such a believer in those weekly rhythms and
Yes.
and the monthly and quarterly and all of those. This is super helpful. Is there anything that you feel like people just ought to know when it comes to measurables that you wish everybody knew when you first get to talk to them about measurables?
Well, again, if they have some, what are they telling you? Just slow down and ask that question. What are these numbers telling you? Is that true in your business? If it isn't, then maybe it's not the right number. But are you getting what you want from your numbers? And if you're not, are they the right numbers? And it doesn't have to be a huge 6-week program or anything like that. And again, everyone should have a number, and the numbers should all add up into what you want to achieve week in, week out, quarter in, quarter out. It's all a math problem. So if we can keep it like that and say, okay, what do you want from this person? The 3 to 5 things you need from them to work on every week. Can any one of those 3 to 5 things be quantified? If they can, put them on a scorecard, start getting data, and then that'll start telling you what's going on.